Hi, everybody. This is Sarah, Pearls of Wisdom and Food, with another Tuesday with a Turtle. And this has a different twist to it. This is Susan. And Susan, I met when she was interviewed by Mike at Carnomad, formerly Keto Mad. And that's how I met her. And then she began to watch me, and we are both fellow Topo Chico fans. But Susan is here with something, and she came forward, and I'm really glad. And she's a very smart, thoughtful, mindful woman. So, what she is going to be telling us today is along her keto journey, and I can't wait to hear about it. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Sarah. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay,
Okay.
beans.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much of my story you want me to tell. I'll try to do that a little bit quickly. And I did tell some of that in the interview that I did with Mike, which at the time I think was still keto mad and heading towards carno mad.
Yes.
Um, but my journey started when I was very young. When I was 10 years old, my mom, at the advice or on the advice of my pediatrician, took me to Weight Watchers for the first time. And that was almost a lifelong journey. In fact, I eventually was a Weight Watchers leader, and a lot of your viewers and you, of course, will know the path that takes. So, when before I was a teenager, I knew the calories, the carb counts of everything that I put in my mouth, and whether I wrote it down or not, which I usually did, it was there in my head. So I have been heavy pretty much all my life until my 40s. I have gone to camps. I have put on camps because, as a lot of other people who have issues with being overweight, that became my career. Nutrition has always been my greatest interest as far as even my career. So I've done a lot of things. And at this point, I am a nutritional therapy practitioner. And I do a lot of reading. If I'm not actively doing something else, I have something in my ear or I'm reading a book or something to do with nutrition. So my path recently has been to focus on a dragon that I have never been able to slay, and that is sugar. I am a sugar and carbohydrate addict. And when I say carbohydrate addict, I don't mean the good carbohydrates, such as the veggies that we add into our keto or carnivore uh, food plans. I'm talking if it is sweet, white, doughy, it just is almost irresistible to me, or has been until recently. And I think I have been reintroduced to or hit on something that has given me a lot of success recently. So years ago, and by that I mean in the late 90s, I stumbled upon a doctor named Kathleen de Maison, and she wrote a couple of books. The first one was Potatoes Not Prozac, and the second one was the Sugar Addicts Total Recovery Program. So I read those back then, but at the time I had a young child and was under far more stress even than I am today. So I just could not get immersed into her program, and I did not find a lot of success, but I did keep those books on my shelf. And the funny thing is, you know how sometimes you'll go through and you'll purge your books and, you'll throw things out. Well, those two books have stayed on the shelf all these years. So recently, I read a couple of books by Dr. Julia Moore called The Mood Cure and The Diet Cure that focus on the effect of amino acids on our endorphins. So I just became very fascinated with that. And as I was reading her book, I thought, this sounds a lot like the Radiant Recovery Program that I read years ago by Kathleen de Maison. So I pulled that book out too. And lo and behold, there's just a wealth of information that I had not really been exposed to even through my education in nutrition. So that's what I've been reading the last month or two, and I have, set up N equals one protocols for myself, and Some of it, worked really well and then, didn't. And I actually even tried to get into supplementing with with the amino acids to um, affect my neurotransmitters, which is something that Julia Moore writes about in her book. But that was just not really working for me. I found that I didn't like the way I felt sometimes during the day, and I wasn't able to sleep at night. And because I was using a number of different amino acids, I was having a hard time deciding which ones were doing what. So I thought, okay, this is not working. So when I went back to Kathleen de Maison's book, it all comes down to food. It's so simple. You can totally manipulate your your neurotransmitters, which to me the most important ones, or for me the most important ones, are beta endorphin and serotonin, and you can totally manipulate that with the food that you eat. So, just in case others, aren't familiar with that concept, beta endorphin is our feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's also a natural painkiller. So, we sugar-sensitive people, a lot of times what we're trying to do is just to kill pain. Just kill that emotional pain. Just check out for a little bit. So, a lot of times we're really low in beta endorphin, and then the other neurotransmitter that I'm focusing on is serotonin. And serotonin puts the brakes on. Serotonin is what? It helps with mood, it helps with sleep, it helps with our appetite, it helps us to say no to things, that we shouldn't have, including, of course, sugar and alcohol, by the way, which that's all tied in together, which you know that. So, anyway, I started to put together a protocol that would help me to increase both of those neurotransmitters. And so far, I'm having pretty good success. And I'll tell you another little interesting aside that has to do with an actual study that kind of further solidified my belief that this was a path I should go down. In the book, the sugar sensitive program, the Total Recovery book, there's a study about mice, and of course we know that we pay a lot of attention to mice studies because, oddly enough, they're very similar in their behavior and their reactions to things as humans are. And so they did this study, and they used two groups of mice, and one of them is called C57, and the other is DBA. And I won't go into why they named them that, but anyway, those were the two groups of mice that they used. And they learned that the C57 mice were very sugar and alcohol sensitive. And I think this study was prompted for alcohol recovery, but it also includes sugar. So these mice, they are born with a much greater desire for sugar, and they have a greater reaction to both sugar and alcohol. So they have a huge interest in sugars, and they respond more intensely to sugar. They're much more likely to seek sugar out than the DBA mice. The DBA mice are, in fact, alcohol and sugar avoiding. They try to stay away from it. So another interesting thing about these C57 mice is that they respond 35 times greater to morphine, and morphine actually gives them energy. It hypes them up, and sugar does too. So they're very, they react more than your DBA mice would be what we would hope would be a normal mouse or a normal person. So another interesting thing about these mice is when they were subjected to danger, the C57 mice would cower in fear and would just lay down, and the DBA mice would look for a way of escape. So that made me think of the times that I isolate when I am having my sugar fix, you know. So I discovered real quick that I'm a C57 mouse, and it made me think of you when I first decided that, because I thought that's my Miss Slick. That's the C57 in me is my Miss Slick. So I just thought that was an interesting story, and as I said, it further it gave evidence to me that this is the way I needed to go. So what I do is I focus, and you're not going to be surprised, on protein.
Okay.
You know, I've gone down a path of, I think I was first introduced to a more holistic way of eating back in 2013, 2014. And I started out in the paleo movement, you know, and really wasn't working for me. And of course, I know now that it's because, you know, paleo, while it is very nutritious, it also keeps so many of those sugars in, you know, and they may be natural sugars, they may be organic sugars, but sugar has the same effect regardless. We know that. So I kept moving on the continuum and I came to keto and things got a little better. And then eventually I came to carnivore, which you probably remember that back in January, I did the WOBO, the week of burger only, and felt really, really great. I mean, that really reduced my inflammation and just it really, I felt great that way. But there's still something missing because I just, you know, I would go back and forth between doing really well with carnivore or carnivish because I was, Mike, if he sees this, I'll have to admit that even though I made it through the 7 days, I did go back to the nuts and the nut butter. So I couldn't resist that. But anyway, that's why I call myself carnivish. I have very few vegetables, but I do get into the nuts and the nut butter sometimes. So anyway, I needed more help with sugar, and that's when I stumbled back on these books. And I have just learned that what is most important for me is the protein, and I eat about twice as much, like you, as I did. I don't eat as much fat as I once did, and I eat very, very low carb. Um, the carbs that I get do come from basically the nuts and the nut butter, and I'll occasionally have some lettuces. You got me interested in butter lettuce, so I have some of that too. But another part of it is that I learned that while I thought I was having pretty good success with intermittent fasting, and even at one point and for quite a long time was OMAD, that doesn't work for a terribly sugar sensitive person. So at least it doesn't work for me. And according to what I'm reading, that's a very common thing. So now I am eating 3 meals a day at regular intervals. And at the end of the day, just before bedtime, I have a carb with no fat, no protein, just a straight carb. And the combination of the consistent protein in the right amounts all day long, and then the carb at the end of the day increases serotonin. And I'm really finding that to be true, at least for me. And I feel much better than I have in a very long time. So um, that's my story.
You
Up
spilled the
until this
beans.
point, I spilled the beans. I'm eating
Well,
three
okay,
meals
I've
a
got
day.
so many
Oh my.
questions. That was
Oh.
great. Now, when you say you have a carb at night, give us an example of what that carb is.
Well, if you remember the first book I mentioned, Potatoes Not Prozac, that's the carb. At the end of the day, that's what Kathleen de Maison recommends. And it has to have the peel on it. It can have any kind of fat on it, as long as, but I generally don't put that on it, but as long as it's just a straight carb. So I have a little bit of roasted potatoes with the skin on, and you don't have to have a lot, just a little bit before I go to bed. And I am still in ketosis because I'm a data geek, so I still check my ketones. And this morning I was at zero point 0.7, and that was just upon waking. So they'll probably increase through the day. But yes, now if I'm somewhere where I can't have my little roasted, or because I've gotten creative with my potato, but if I can't have that, then, and I don't recommend this, but it's in a pinch, I will have a few organic tortillas, corn tortilla chips. So yeah, that's what I do when I'm traveling. Or
Fascinating. I love that you never threw out those two books, and as
yeah,
something inside of you knew that you might be pulling these down. And I had Sugar Blues by William Dufty,
yes, I've read that
Gloria
too.
Swanson's wife,
Mm-hmm.
and I never threw that out either. It's up there in my bookcase someplace, but it's just like I knew one day
Yeah,
that I was going to like address the sugar. Now, let me ask you, when you say that you're a sugar, always sugar, when you were doing carnivore and keto before this change that you've done,
Mm-hmm.
you did the carnivore in 2018, not 19, right?
Uh, yes, I was experimenting with carnivore at the end of 2018, but I
Yes.
did do the week of burger only the first week of January.
Oh, okay. So it was 2019.
Yes, but like I say, I had been experimenting with. I can't until that week. I was not fully carnivore because I had to have that little bit of. I had to have my nuts and nut butter.
Okay. So those are the things where you get your carbs. You're not having green every day, little green.
No, I do not have. In fact, I don't have vegetables very often at all.
All right. So walk us through your from waking up to your little bit of a roasted potato at night.
Okay.
It is that you have in your three meals and the grams of protein, if you've ever seen how many you have with each meal.
Well, now I have not been tracking. What I do is I weigh and measure, but I don't track at this point because I've got so much going on with the protocol to keep up with anyway, and to make sure that I'm on track. That would be a little bit too much for me because I'm careful not to stress myself out too much. But anyway, so when I get up, I definitely within an hour, but hopefully within 30 minutes, which I can't remember that happening. That's something I'm still working on. I need to have protein just as soon as I get up. So I typically have either bacon and eggs or cottage cheese with, believe it or not, frozen bacon crumbled up on top of it.
Okay.
Um, Something like that. I'm trying to think of other things that I might have. I've kind of gotten into more dairy recently than I used to have. So I may have some full fat Greek yogurt with some slivered almonds on top of it.
Are we talking like a half a
Um,
cup of cottage cheese, half a cup of almond?
oh no, 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 no.
Oh,
We're talking 2 or 3 eggs and bacon, or 6 to 8 ounces of Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. We're talking hefty servings.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yum.
So that's the way I start the day. And then about 5 hours later, I will have lunch, which is 4 ounces of protein, and it's usually meat. I'll have, hamburger patties or steak, or my favorite thing is steak with butter. Um, but I'll have a good 4 ounce portion of meat. And if I have anything at all with it, it's usually half an ounce or so of nuts, mixed nuts. And then 5 hours later, I'll have the same thing again, um, maybe just a different kind of meat. I'm very simple. I don't do a lot of recipes. I think the most unusual thing I've had recently would be I ran across some miracle noodles in a health food store, and I put ground beef over those and some butter, and it was pretty good. So try to vary it a little bit that way, but that's typically what I have. And then about 3 hours after my last protein meal, I'll have the carb, the potato, right before I go to bed.
Do you ever experience hunger?
No, no, because I've got that protein way up there. And, I really feel, I once thought that fat was the hunger satiety lever, but I don't really think that anymore. I think it's protein.
I totally agree with you. Um, has your weight changed since you've upped your protein and you have the three meals a day?
No, it's staying consistent. And, the interesting thing about that is, I fret over that all the time. That's one of my biggest concerns. Now, I think that I have said before that I do weigh every day, but I don't look at it. I have a scale that goes into my Fitbit, and I don't look at it other than maybe once a month. And what I'm looking for is ups and downs, and I'll go back into my journals, which I'm a faithful journaler. And I think that is a really important piece of anybody's food plan. But I'll go back and look and see what I was doing. if I have some fluctuations. But, I mean, I've gone through so many different protocols. And since I started in 2013 when I discovered, paleo, my weight has not fluctuated more than about 5 pounds in all that time. But yet I worry and I fret, and so as long as I think as long as we are consistent, meaning over a long period of time, if we have anybody is going to have ups and downs. We're going to have things that make us eat emotionally, or we have a big event. Those things, they just don't throw me anymore, because if you go right back to your consistent food plan, it's going to work itself out. And if you're not um, fixated on that scale on a daily basis, there's no, I don't see anything wrong with looking occasionally and looking for trends, but I just do not stress myself out over the scale anymore.
Yeah, I broke up with my scale too. It's just once a month, and the first Thursday of every month. So, but the cool thing is that your Fitbit records that. So if you do have the inclination to do a look back,
Yes.
see, and and it sounds to me like you are so consistent with your foods, and it sounds to me like you're quite comfortable with the simplicity.
Yes, yes. I can't say that I get bored. There was a time when I discovered paleo years ago. I went through baking and recipes and that kind of thing. I think that's very common. But over time, I just today, if I feel like I need something that would require baking, it's out there. You can buy it, and I just get a little bit of it. I get that out of my system and I move on. And by that, I mean, if I want a cookie or a cake or something like that, and of course it would be sweetened with an alternative sweetener, not sugar. Then, but at this point, I don't really need that. I do occasionally have fat bombs. I keep those in the freezer, and those I have made myself, but it's seldom that I pull those out. Um, but it's and I'm honest to say that over the last few years, there have been some pretty significant strays from the program. Sometimes it lasts. Well, no, it doesn't last a day. It's always 3 days to 3 weeks. Let's just be honest about it. And I'll go down that dark hole, but I always pull myself back out. And I guess that's a message that I really want to promote: is you cannot go down so far that you can't dig yourself out. You just have to hit the delete button and move on. Otherwise, you will end up with a huge amount of weight, either on or back on. But if you will just keep a food plan that works for you in your head, written down somewhere that you're going to go back to, you can dig yourself out of any um, binge hole you get into.
And are you okay around other people's food choices that you or work with or socialize with?
Yes, I think so. And I think part of that comes from working with so many different people with so many different issues and needs as far as clients go. I learned early on that it's real easy to put your own uh, protocol on somebody else, but it's not. You learn right away that it won't be successful if it's not addressing their specific concerns. So I'm taught to work with a client to determine their top 3 to 5 issues, and that's where we start. And we start where they are, and a lot of times they're not the same issues as mine. And so I think that's made it easier for me to be in social situations, because when I see somebody that's eating something that I would not, I have to remember that, I am a unique snowflake, and so are they. So,
And it's very, very interesting because I'm sure you are great at meeting them right where they're at, but I'm also sure that you meet them on a Monday and they've got, you know, the issues that you've learned about, and it's not going to be overnight at all. And
no.
it guarantees, it's not like the weight loss that just goes down a nice straight line. You're gonna see this with them because sometimes they probably aren't really very excited about giving up a lot of things. And where to begin? Would you start somebody with food that has like say sugar and white flour issues? Where would you begin with them? Would you begin with them with a few items or maybe just one out of their life for a week to see how they do it? How do you do that with them?
Well, the first message that I give anybody that I work with is we're going to go slow. And the main thing I want you to remember is don't scare yourself. Because when somebody gets scared, whether they think they're going to have to give up something that they don't want to, or that it's not going to work, or for whatever reason, then that leads to paralysis. And we want to keep moving forward. So, really, the first thing that I do with anyone that I work with is to have them to be observant. I want to know if the main thing in their pantry or in their refrigerator is white and sugar laden, because I've learned that it may not be. I have worked with people who their uh, kryptonite was cheese. Well, that would never cross my mind. I can take or leave cheese, you know, but people have, different cravings to satisfy, and we have to go there. So the first thing I do is have them to be observant. So not necessarily, I don't tell them to just totally remove anything until usually 2 to 3 weeks in, which leads to a little bit slower. It's not going to give you that rocket weight loss in the beginning, but I've come to the point in my career, because nutritional therapy is not my main career. I've come to the point where, frankly, if weight loss is their first concern, I'm very hesitant to take them on as a client, because I want them to be healthy more than I want them to lose the weight. And sometimes, the weight it's just another symptom. And there are so many other things that will help them to feel better before they even get the weight off. So we begin observing, and then we start slowly eliminating.
It must be fascinating for you. Fascinating.
Oh, I love it, because um, since I have come to the point where I'm more, interested in overall health than in weight loss, I'm seeing people that are getting results with things that um, are far more interesting to me than just losing weight. I had somebody that was just in so much pain with arthritis, and I said, "Have you considered eliminating nightshades?" Well, of course, I think everybody knows what's in my head, and they had no idea what a nightshade was. So, I mean, honestly, within about 3 days, she felt so much better. The swelling, you could look at her fingers, the swelling was going down. And it was that simple. She was popping tomatoes as a snack all day long, the little cherry tomatoes. And while they are a nutritious food for some of us, they don't work. So,
Wow. That's great. Like who would think? And it's true. When you say nightshades, so what are those, or the dirty dozen, or any of those things that we can
right.
say and have visuals and be all set. We can even think of the doctors that specialize in you giving up those things, and the interviews we've seen
Right. Yes.
for these people is like nightshades.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Do I sleep with a nightlight on or something? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, all right, so back to you.
Okay.
So you have beef every day.
Yes, I do. I love beef.
I do too.
Recently, I've had chicken. Just recently, I've added that back in because I had so much in the freezer. but I have to slather it with butter. I
Well,
dip
last
it in
night I had a
butter.
pork roast from Whole Foods, and my stomach, I did an overnight, so I was awake. My stomach was like just, and it didn't sit well. And I was like, it's a protein. So what's the difference between this? But I've been beef every day. So it really
Mm.
it bothered me. I don't know if it would ever end up on my short list again.
Yeah, that's
Things
interesting.
in my freezer, you know.
Yeah.
All right, so then I didn't ask you this or hear it in your story. Coffee?
Oh yes, as strong as you can get it. In fact, I'm a coffee snob. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
tell
I
us.
well, it's nothing exciting. It's just that I drink the strongest Starbucks bitterest coffee that I can find. My husband, he loves a smooth roast, but I just have to have it black and strong. And I do sometimes put a little MCT oil in there if I have to be, like this morning when I had to turn my brain on very quickly. So I'll use a little MCT oil. But I don't even use butter or heavy cream in my coffee anymore. In fact, I have learned that heavy cream spikes my blood sugar, or it's a spike for me. It probably would not be as that high for some people, but it definitely raises mine way too much. So I leave off the heavy cream. So if I were to put anything other than the MCT oil, it would be butter, and it does fine. But I don't need it. Oh, and I use collagen
Oh,
every
like
day.
the powder?
Yes, the collagen peptides.
Do you shut yourself off from coffee after a certain time of the day?
Absolutely. I do not drink coffee after noon, 12 o'clock.
Okay. So you wake up probably feeling like a number 10 every day.
I wouldn't say a number 10. Most days that I wake up feeling really well. I have arthritis in my neck. And so that's a real battle for me because I try to have a little bit of an exercise program, and there's a real fine line for me between overdoing and not overdoing when it comes to my neck. So that's the only thing, and that's not really food related anymore because I don't eat nightshades, so I don't think that's an issue for my joints and my arthritis. But most days, yes, I wake up with good energy and ready to go.
So you find that you can just put in a nice productive day versus going to the gym and doing 40 minutes of yoga or something like that.
Yes, I'm not. I did work with a trainer for a while, and I think I worked with her enough to glean some exercises that I can very easily do at home that are weight bearing, and I use free weights. But mostly, what I do is walk, and I try to walk outside and get some sunshine. I did take Blake Donaldson's book, Strong Medicine. I took that very seriously. It's quaint. The language is quaint, and some things that he did made me raise my eyebrows, or that he recommended made me raise my eyebrows. But I I really was impressed with that book. So in fact, I do the arthritis exercises that he had little sketches in the book, and I do those on a daily basis now, and I think it's really helping.
Oh, I love that. Now, since you've been on this protocol, um, do you find that arthritis is affected by weather? And but with your protocol now, you seem to like bounce off of things much easier without the
I
pain.
I haven't noticed that mine is affected so much by the weather. My arthritis at this point is fairly isolated just to my neck. My even my finger joints don't seem to be affected very much, and it is osteoarthritis. And I don't notice that it's affected by the weather, but I do notice that it's affected by what I eat. So, and I thought now that brings up something interesting because I thought that the potato might flare up my arthritis. But it's kind of hard for me to tell at this point because of incorporating more exercise. It's hard for me to know which one is having more of an effect. And if I do decide that the potato is causing me a problem, then I'll just switch my carb. But in Kathleen de Maison's book, she's very, very adamant that that is uh, the best carbohydrate to use to increase your serotonin. So I've tried to stick with that for the time being, but I will change it to something else if I need to.
Is it always a white potato and never a sweet potato?
Never sweet potato. That would be an alternative pretty far down the line as far as she would be concerned. But it's any kind of potato. I mean, the little, I've had the little Yukon Golds, and I've had red potatoes, and I've had russets. I don't do so much of the russets because I need just a really small amount, and I don't want to get too much of the potato flesh without the skin. I mean, it's not that I don't want to eat the flesh, but it's just that I want to make sure that I have a good ratio of skin for that fiber so that, it doesn't affect my blood sugar as much as possible.
Sounds great. How many hours of sleep is a good night for you?
7 is acceptable, but between 7 and 8 is what I prefer. I like 8, but I seldom sleep 8 hours. And I know that a lot of that has to do with just age, but that's something that I have really worked on. I have good habits when it comes to sleep hygiene. I use blue blockers at night and try to get away from the screen. And I take an Epsom salt bath every night. um, I have, some hot tea. I have a routine that I do that is very consistent. So I think that helps with sleep, but I know there are other things that I can do to tweak my sleep.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, didn't it work when we were kids or we raised kids? The bath, the story, in the jammies by a certain time.
Yes.
Now here we are, the grown-ups with our Epsom salt bath, and now you've got your little potato and you've got your little
Mm-hmm.
just done the way it is. I think it's really, really sweet. It's so funny because like how would you know we aren't night creatures at all, but it's like how can people not have a social life affected by self-care, the kind of self-care that we practice, it I don't think I'd want to be out playing cards with neighbors till 10 at night.
No, and I'm in a place now where I can do more self-care. I was in the school system for 20 years and up at 5:30, and I really do feel much better now than I did all those years. I try to keep my circadian rhythm close to sunrise and sunset. I pay very close attention to those. And, in the morning, I'll wear my blue blockers until the sun starts to rise and try to be careful. In the summertime, it's harder. We're right on the line here between Central and Eastern time, and probably should be more on Central time, but we're not. So in the summertime, it stays daylight until after 9 o'clock some nights. So, especially when I was having a really early schedule, it was hard for me to go to bed, early enough. But in the past 6 or 8 months, I've been able to do more of that. And it really does make a difference. I feel so much for people like you and others that have work schedules that kind of conflict with the natural circadian rhythm, because I do feel better since I've been able to sleep more.
Yeah. Well, when I get a good night's sleep, like I have the next 2 days off, so that really works too. But I seem to thrive on that. If I had to work 4 to midnight, I'd be a mess. So
Mm,
overnights don't bother me as much. I go to bed at 4:30 in the afternoon when I'm working overnight, and sometimes it's just eyes closed, lying there.
right.
Sleep takes over. But yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. And did you tell us everything that you want us to know? Did I not get a nugget?
No, yes, I think I did. I guess I would like to just throw out the idea to those who are just knocked out by sugar, because it's very discouraging to feel like you have so much self-control in regard to your food plan, your fitness, and then just on a regular basis just get knocked out and end up in a hole of eating, huge amounts of sugars, and I'm certainly not going to trigger anybody by going down the list. You can use your imagination. But even somebody like me who is so, I mean, I am a very, very disciplined, self-disciplined person. I'm very organized. I'm a linear thinker. Otherwise, in my life, I have a huge amount of self-control. But when it comes to sugar, um, I'm still subject to that myself, and I'm losing you. But uh, it's not you. It's not me. It's our biology, you know, it's our chemistry, and we can change that. And I just want to throw out there to people that they might want to do some reading, some, look up the things that I have mentioned today and just see if any of that resonates. Because, they're never give up. Winston Churchill said it, never give up, never, never, never give up.
And that's why I love working with us, older metabolism people, people that are turtles that thought they'd never lose another pound. And that it's just like, you know, they thought that the shoebox of meds would be their best friend. And it's just, it can be as simple as the sugar, can't it?
Yes,
Emotionally
yes.
and physically, that body craving it. How important are labels to you in your work?
Oh, absolutely important. Well, I don't eat very many foods that have a label, quite frankly. Um, but the first thing that I look at is not the calories or the carbs, it's the ingredients. I can tell right away if the ingredients are a paragraph long or if there is a crafty, clever name for sugar that I'm not going to, I don't care how many carbs are in it or how many calories. But past the ingredient label, of course, I am looking at carbs, and I am a total carb person. Um, so I'm looking at total carbs and protein. I want to make sure that that's my number one priority is protein throughout the day.
This is
And
fascinating. You've taught us all so much.
well, and I'm happy to do that. The thing that I was a little bit hesitant about or cautious about is that I know that so many of um, your viewers are focused on intermittent fasting and OMAD and are very successful at that, and I applaud that. I did have success with it, and I felt pretty good with it, but I just learned that I had. That it was correlated with my sugar consumption. So, the fact that I'm a 3 meal a day eater is a little bit unusual, for our group. But it's working for me. It may not continue to work, but at this point, it's working.
And it's just part of your journey. You're being a snowflake. And I think it's important to know that because some people might struggle and white knuckle the intermittent fasting. And it's like, go back. Go back to, 2 or 3 meals a day. Don't, there's no heroes in this. And if you're struggling, maybe that's what you need, you know.
And it has not negatively affected my weight, but again, I'm very careful about what I eat. And I was frankly almost as afraid of protein as I was of carbs. For so many years, um, the powers that be have suggested that gluconeogenesis would, knock us out if we got too much protein, that kind of thing. And I'm learning that that's not necessarily so. Everybody is unique, our metabolisms, and we just have to keep looking, for that that thing that is going to help us to be successful and is sustainable. Those two S's, success and sustainability, are very important to me. If I don't feel like I can do it for a lifetime, it does not last long because I know it won't last long. So I'm looking for things that I can incorporate into my personal protocol that are doable for a lifetime.
Well, your foods sound delightful, and maybe some people have heard some things. Maybe it takes a while in the keto journey to just learn about how foods make you feel and do some eliminations there, like stop ketofying desserts or breads, and then getting to the keto with the veggies, and then suddenly the veggies aren't like working for you, and then kind of eliminating them. It seems like you've learned. It's not like one size fits all, and you've learned over the years, and now here you are with your 3 meals and your little bite or two of potato, and it's working. And if it doesn't work, you'll be on it because you're paying attention.
Well, and I tell you one thing that I have learned that I am very adamant about now is if I don't like it, I don't eat it. I don't care how good for me somebody tells me it's supposed to be. And for so many years, it was the USDA telling me that it was good for me. And quite frankly, they can't be trusted. So if I don't like it, I don't eat it. And things that fall into that category are tomatoes. I never liked them anyway, so I don't know why I was even eating them. Kale, I don't like it, you know, so I don't eat it.
Yeah, and they say the same thing about exercise too. People go to the gym and pay $80 an hour for a trainer to do all this grueling stuff, and it's like, I just really like to walk, and it's like,
Right.
so finally somebody will say to them that has some street creds, why don't you just walk? you know,
Hmm.
instead of feeling guilty or poor about shedding out this money, and, just, well, why don't you just keep walking? And I agree with you with the foods. If just because liver is supposed to be good for me doesn't mean that I'm scheduling it in
Exactly. And I
the
tried
magic
that.
marker.
I had my first liver at 10 when I joined Weight Watchers, and my mother made it into chili. That was not a good way to start an adolescent on a path to weight loss, shall we say.
That must have been your Weight Watchers story. Could be a book as it is, even without all the wonderful things that have happened to you after.
Oh,
Well,
I was in Weight Watchers when you had to say whether you were legal or illegal, and
oh,
just the very early days, back in that would have been 1970.
I was in Overeaters in the early 70s, Overeaters Anonymous, and they had a gray sheet and an orange sheet. And yeah, it was stark. It was very, very stark. And, such rules, such craziness. I only did a few months of Weight Watchers. I wasn't um, one that kept going back, giving it one more chance. But wow, such great stories. We have another person here, another turtle that was the receptionist and the weigh-in person at Weight Watchers, and she talks about how horrible it felt to give people the news.
Yes, yes.
She never had that joy of just being the leader out there, but she didn't want to be either. So, well, thank you so much, Susan. This has been absolutely enlightening for all of us. And I think a lot of us are sitting there saying, I love cottage cheese. I love full
Yeah.
yogurt. And you can have that. I used to have my full fat yogurt with a nut butter.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
that thought has crossed my mind, but I have
Yeah.
not done it.
Oh, that was divine. And I do that like 2 tablespoons of almond butter or cashew butter on my yogurt when I was
We
having
know my
a
favorite
day.
nut butter is pecan butter.
Oh, I've never had
Here
that.
in the South, we have lots of pecans. So Georgia Grinders makes a wonderful pecan butter.
Yum, yum. Well, thank you. And I'm going to
Thank you.
thank you. And then I'm going to thank the viewers for watching. And I'm going to say goodbye to our viewers, and then we'll close out just you and me. So, uh,
Okay, great.
all right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been Sarah, Pearls of Wisdom and Food with Susan and her great story. Thank you.